And if my internet goes out, just roll with it. We're live. Hello. And thank you for joining us for another industry live sensitive assumptions theory. Not theory. Sensitive.
Sensitive assumptions.
Yeah. Series. Series is the word. Help me out, kids.
Mike Tyson took over your mouth for a minute.
There we go. So I'm ThatKimberly, and this is
I'm Alfonso.
And
I'm Alfonso, also known as Poncho.
Poncho.
We're gonna get this down. I have Poncho and the Diana Benitez on with me today, and we're gonna be talking about workplace bullies. And first, before we kick off, I do want to apologize for using the word narcissist in the last last couple lives I did with Poncho. And by myself, using that word is putting a label on someone that's bad. Should not do that. That is not showing empathy or compassion towards that, whoever that is. And two, that is actually a clinical diagnosis in that big book of health. There's a word for that big book, but it's an actual diagnosis, and we're not doctors.
Disclaimer, we're not doctors.
We're not doctors, so I should not be labeling it and giving diagnosis. So from now on, I will refer to the person that I was speaking. You can go back to my Instagrams and check out. I'll just revert to him as bully or the mean person in my life. Okay, so I apologize. Just was brought to my attention. Appreciate people holding me accountable. So if you guys have questions, please leave them in the comments. I want to get to them. This is a safe space. We want to start this conversation about the mental health in the workspace, and that's what the series is about, and that's what this topic or conversation is today, is bullies in the workplace. So leave comments and or questions wherever you are, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube or Twitter, and that's it. Okay, let's jump into this.
And hit that subscribe button and the like button and share with everyone, please.
Please.
Thank you. So let's jump into this without further ado. So I Googled something, y'all. I Googled how many people report that they were bullied in the workplace, and guess how many people reported that they've been bullied.
80%, 50%, maybe nothing. No one reported.
50 million people say they're affected by workplace bullying. And there's a .gov site for it. So,
yeah, I mean, it plays a major impact in who you are, how you see yourself when you're getting that type of attention or that pressure at work. It really takes a toll on you. It stains you. It stains your brain.
And it wears you down, having been in a situation at one point, even though, I'm really good with that stuff and really good at handling it and confronting it. I can't say I've had a lot of experience being bullied, but, there was a time at one of my employers where for about a month before I left, I would sit in the parking lot for about 30 minutes with my stomach churning, saying, I need this job. They pay me well. I love this place.
Yeah.
I love my employees. Okay, I'm going in.
Yeah.
Right. And that
like giving yourself a pep talk to go to get through the doors.
And sometimes you've got to, right? But over the course of almost 40 years of leading people now, you come across lots of experiences, but at the same time, you pick up a lot of really good tools. And so Kim and I talked a lot yesterday, and I brought something into her consciousness about someone living rent-free in your head.
Yep.
Right. And a lot of times, you think of bullies and you might think of what you see on TV, somebody coming and snatching up your lunch money or, taking your parking spot or something like that. But oftentimes it isn't really that. Sometimes it's just somebody that stays in your head because of the way they've treated you or what they imply about you or what they're saying about you when you're not around, or sometimes inferring it at you. And so, talking to Kimberly about that, the situation that she's been in has really reminded me a lot of that. When she's talking about this person in her life that has been living in her head rent free, my recommendation to folks, whether it's employees or people in my life that have encountered that and bring that forward. But I was actually part of a training, believe it or not, where someone brought that to my attention, saying, hey, somebody's living in your head rent free. Is that you don't let them live rent free in your life, right? It's easier said than done to say. It's like a tube of toothpaste, right? You kind of squeeze it out until that last drop is
it's
gone.
part of the healing, though, because everyone that hurts you in a certain way will leave a traumatic experience in you.
Yeah.
So a traumatic emotion. So when you think of them, this emotion automatically comes out, and you're like, why do I get pissed off when I think about that person? Or why? Because that emotion is associated with the way they made you feel.
And as Latins do therapy, so for me, like, I just thought it was normal to shut up, not say anything bad about someone. Don't say, I think the term is, if you don't have anything nice to say, you don't say anything at all. I would down whenever, he would speak or he would say something, but I did that in the workplace. Like if I get angry because I was finding myself by someone who was kind of a bully or a mean person, I would shut down because I immediately wanted to go in mechanism pissed off mode, right?
But because it was creating that emotion that you were used to, that you knew you didn't like, and it triggered it to
and how
bad trigger.
And the way that it materializes, right, is how it depends how we handle it, is how we allow it to materialize and show what it is, right? So if some people are really good at just deflecting it, it's no big deal, I'm not going to worry about it. Other people are really good at saying, hey, wait a minute, you can't treat me like that. I'm not going to accept that. Yeah. And then there's probably the worst thing to do, which is just to swallow it. Right? And you swallow it, and then eventually, I always say it's like a festering boil, which will eventually, it's going to hurt a bunch.
A festering boil is...
It's going to blow. It's going to blow, and it's going to hurt.
People pop right away. Sorry.
It's going to make a mess. It's going to make a mess, and so it's really important to find mechanisms that help you manage that. I always tell people, it isn't about getting it to go away. It's about learning to manage it. It really is. Oftentimes we focus so much on saying, I'm just going to, therapy is going to make it go away, or exercise is going to make it go away, or alcohol or drugs or other destructive things will make it go away. It won't. It might go away for a little bit, but then it comes back like a freight train. And so
and holding yourself up to as you learn. Well, for me, as I learn these tools in therapy, like I started group therapy settings, back when my 30s. But with my relationships, my boyfriend relationships, even my employee relationships. I mean, ask Diana, she can hold me accountable, but I didn't realize, because I dealt with that one human in my life that was my biggest bully, that I did tolerance for people who were any kind of bullies at all, that I would just shut down or not say something, or somebody else would deal with them. And it's usually just because I didn't want to have conflict, and I didn't use the tools that I had been taught. And media, people always say, oh, social media, it's bad, this, that, and the other, to put out there. But there have been these bullies forever. I mean, there's a website, stopbullying.com, for a reason. The United States has a website, stopbullying.gov. I'll show it at the end. A reason, because it's a real problem. It's a real thing. Kids are being bullied and things happen. But what social media is doing now is it's exposing us, and it's also holding us accountable. And that's what I'm trying to do here, is take the lessons that I've learned in therapy and apply them to the workspace and to other people, and talk about situations, right? Like you just said, when for that month you would sit there and go, I have a job, I can do this. That's giving yourself a pep talk or a mantra. What'd you call that?
It's just helping you get through that situation.
It's just helping you get through it.
You have to trick your own self, because no one else is gonna. I mean, if you're in a situation that you cannot get out of and you are there, believe me, I've been in some of those.
What did you do? What did you, Diana, when you were there in that situation? You can keep the name to protect the innocent.
I was in a very toxic environment, and I was the only positive person in that toxic environment. So I was questioned, why I would talk to people, why I was so happy. You know, it got to a point where no one was allowed to talk to me
because you were the sparkling light, and this is not them, people. This was somewhere else long after.
And it was cultural differences. They expected you to be a certain way, but you know, cultural does play a certain part.
Yeah.
And every type of personality is part of a team. So it really made me question for a split second, like my ability to create, who I was as a creator, because the treatment that I was having was not of someone that was
appreciating. They weren't
appreciated or trusted, or you know. And I did a lot of things above and beyond of what their expectations were, and it seemed that
it made you sad. It made you sad going into work, right? Like you were sad going into work.
I would have to take deep breaths, like, come on, you got this. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. And I would make the best of it because I knew that with my good attitude, I was uplifting the other people that were being, like, basically it was a cancer that was coming over us. And it was a format because it would go from one person to another person. It's a tactic. And when you learn how to read those formats, you don't take them. That's the best way I could say it because I'm in producing, right? So everything's a format. So once you start reading those formats, you're like, you don't take it personal. You know what's coming.
Yeah.
So
when you're saying the word, just so we can clarify for some context, when you heard the format, you're saying like their actions and their, is that what you're meaning?
Like their tactics, like their game plan. This is what we're gonna do.
The patterns that they do.
The patterns will always tell you the story.
Yeah.
Well, I call it format, right?
Bully, like there's a pattern when it comes to bullies, and so that's why there's a website now. You know,
well, I can tell you, there isn't a playbook for bullies. They all have their own technique, and they all
taste, shape, sizes.
They all find that. So I'll tell you the way that I've managed that over time. And again, I'm not playing a victim or anything like that, because I've always had strong positions of authority in the jobs that I've had, but there's always someone that I've always reported to.
Yeah.
So my best tool, my best device, mechanism, whatever you want to call it, to manage that was always the focus on my work, and to not let that trickle down from me to the people that I was responsible for and responsible to.
Yes.
It was always a matter of focus on my work. Don't let this impact the quality of my work. It absolutely has to be about the work. And I'll give you an example. And it wasn't about me. It was one of the guys that worked with me. I don't like to call people my employees. It doesn't feel good to me, but ultimately that's what it was.
I'm with you, Poncho.
And this fellow was bullied by his ex-wife, and then by his wife after. And I never saw a person with a greater ability to focus on work than that one. It almost seemed like when things got worse for him at home,
he became
a better employee. Yeah. And it's funny that you talk about labeling people, Kim. This man's wife became part of a lot of support groups on social media, Facebook in particular, where she would put his name out and she would call him a narcissist all the time. All the time. So I'm glad you recognize that. Whoever brought that to your attention, it's good, you know. And I would tell him, well, you know, she's not a doctor, dude. She's not a therapist, psychologist, or a psychiatrist. She just read it in a book somewhere. I said, and a lot of times when we do that, unfortunately, that's the mirror looking back at us, at least in her case. Right. So,
well, I question myself when, and that's when you deal with like, you know, and we're going to use my bully when but like Diana said, for instance, she questioned her abilities. She questioned her, you know, is her talent any good? You know, sometimes because of the different everybody's brain is different, right? We're all wired differently. So we can't focus on work. Like for me, I could not focus on work when I was so heightened off at the you know, my biggest bully in the world. I couldn't do that. I couldn't focus on my own work. But even though work is a great distraction for me at times, I feel like because I work at home or I work on the road, that I have a harder time just diving into work not already in a good headspace and being creative. Diana, I don't know. What about you?
Well, I mean, for instance, when my mom had open heart surgery and I was there with her in the rehab, all I could, when it was CTM time, like all I could do was work. And that's the only thing that felt normal.
But not because we made you work, right? We didn't make you.
Because it gave me a sense of like, I'm doing something where I can't really.
You didn't feel powerless.
Yeah. I couldn't really like speed up my mom's recovery. All I could do was be there. So that gave me like a sense of like, okay, I'm doing something productive
and normal.
And normal. Yeah. And a lot of the times when I've had the biggest stresses in my life is when I've dove in, been the most creative, like everything, because I really like dive in. It's like a distraction to me. So
but again,
everybody's different,
right? But look at when you were being bullied in the work, when you were in, not this at the CT, we gave people pay time off so that they could just, it's PTO, they didn't call in that morning. As long as their projects were taken care of, we could care less. We never asked them what, now it's called more okay to call it a mental health day. But Janet used to remind me, hey, if this is what these hours are for, they get a certain lot as it's their part of their benefit package. They want to come in today because they want to sit in front of the television. That's okay, right? But when you were in a work environment where you were made to go there and not feeling comfortable, not feeling appreciated, you didn't be productive, right? Well, you questioned yourself.
It pushed me to be even better, actually.
Oh, okay.
Because I was like, okay, well, let's step it up. And even though I stepped it up, I take it as a great learning experience, even though it was a really dark time for not only me, but 12 employees quit after I left.
Wow.
So that tells you like, a little bit of how it was, but
because people don't quit jobs, quit their bosses, other people.
Yes. So, but in reality, I did not allow, and what you say, living rent free. After I left there, I mean, I stayed there to prove a point. I stayed there to uplift others. And I stayed there because I asked God, I was like, when you want me gone, I leave. Like the things will work out that way. I really had the faith because I felt like a quitter if I could, because they were pushing me so hard. I felt like it was a test against my character. So it was like, okay, I'm learning something. I always took it as a learning experience.
Yeah.
And
but some days were hard because I remember talking to you.
Yeah, it was super hard. I was like him. I would go outside, take deep breaths, walk around, do whatever I can, and then just walk in like nothing, right? Because my energy is very strong, whether it's on the happy side or on the bad side. And I usually stay away from people when I'm not vibing high because I don't want to project that on them because I can affect them, right? Yeah. So people that know me, they know.
Yeah, well, and
so one of the big elements that I think is important to talk about too is that, especially when we talk about someone living rent-free in our head or a situation living rent-free in our head, is that there's always that element of a loss of control, right?
Yeah.
Or that someone is trying to control you. Kim, you and I haven't delved into the specifics of your circumstance, but a lot of it feels like that person either tried to control you, try to control your mom, right? And that loss of control is difficult, whether it's a loss of control when you're a child and someone can physically take you and control you, or when you're an adult and someone can try to manipulate you either with emotions, with love, with money, physically, whatever tool that is, right? So it's important to maintain that level of control with yourself, because the things that we can control are, one, our actions, right? And two, our attitudes about things.
Yeah. And that's exactly the test I felt that I was being tested myself for my character. Like under all that pressure, show a good face, continue to show up, and
respect oneself is what my therapist, respecting myself, not letting that person dictate my
emotions.
Where I went, I don't want to be in the same general of the city, right? Like I don't want to even have to drive by the house, right? None of it. Like it is that type of because for 35 years I stuffed it away and put it in a box because I didn't think that there was anything wrong there, right? Like I knew there was something wrong, but I had to just be respectful and don't say anything. Be respectful and don't say anything. So 35 years, be respectful of anything. There's a lot that I'm gotta work through. Yeah.
But eventually you have to let that go. Like I know you're working through it, right? But that's the promise I made myself after I left there. I was like, okay, this chapter has ended. I will not give them any of my energy because I don't belong there anymore. I'm not there anymore. So it doesn't matter. And that helped me heal because regardless, that was trauma, not only for me, but everybody else that was there has so many stories. And one of them actually called me today.
Something called glass door. They have something called glass door.
They're all over it. All the people that left are, it's bombarded. So actually, one of my fellow coworkers just left Friday. So he called me to tell me that he was gone. So
wow.
It's an interesting, all I could say is I learned about a different culture and it made me stronger.
And you let go and let God, right? Like,
yeah, because I was stuck there for a while. Like, you know, as a as an ego, you kind of want to fight back, right? And you're like,
and fighting back is okay.
Yeah.
Fighting back is okay, you know, and that's
physically
a lot of us.
Back. Hey, not physically fighting back.
No, we're getting there.
Yeah.
Miss, let me get ahead of myself here.
I mean,
unless of course you've got, you know, imminent threats, right? But, you know, by allowing your mind to drift back to those things, Kim.
Yeah.
To those 35 years, by allowing, say, I can't drive through there because it elicits this particular response from me. You yourself are giving that control to that, right? And you have to take away from that. Fine example in my life, you know, there was a time for personal reasons that I could not drive by the Burlington coat factory on Yarborough. Mm-hmm. I would avoid it. I used to love that store.
Yeah, I love it. I love Burlington. Shout out Burlington.
I wouldn't go in there anymore because it reminded me of a very difficult time in my life. Mm-hmm. After a while, I thought, what the hell did the store do to me? And second of all, why am I robbing myself of great deals?
There you go.
Because some BS happened there, right?
Yeah.
So I walked my butt in. I bought myself some very nice shirts and saved money, and I overcame that.
Yeah.
So you know, those things are very, very important for all of us. And you're right. We all handle things differently. Things impact us all differently.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, you have to develop a plan, your plan, and approach it, because otherwise you're going to be in a grip for longer than you want.
Because they're living rent free. You're still reacting to what they did to you.
Yeah. And they live in your head, and then that makes you lose respect for yourself. Like any actions that I know that I would take would be one, disrespect for myself first, because mother, the first thing she taught me was to always respect myself and respect it, right? In my own actions. And there's no, like, for example, there's nothing on the internet, on the World Wide Web, that I would be embarrassed of my grandparents or my parents, who were, God rest their soul, my grandparents, but my parents are 75 and 80, that I would be embarrassed for them to see. Not one single thing I'm not embarrassed of.
All I can say is that I'm very grateful there was no
internet,
social media, or camera phones when I was much younger, because I don't think I'd be able to say that.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I don't know if either of you are familiar.
Poncho.
Yeah. Well, we can go into that one later.
Keep it PG, sir.
So, you know, I don't know if either of you are familiar with Eleanor Roosevelt's saying about, you know, no one can mistreat you unless you allow it.
Mistreat.
Yeah.
You know, when it's loose, right? I mean, it's not verbatim, but it's loose. That's how it resonates in my head, right?
Yeah.
And when we're kids, we don't have the tools, we don't have the power to fight back. But Kim, you're a powerhouse. You're a force of nature. I'm sure sometimes it's too much wind.
And feisty one.
But you're a force of nature. You're a force of nature. So, you know, at some point, that's got to start winning.
Yeah.
And to your point about like living rent free, for me, how I've learned to kind of let go of that is really reserving my energy for the people I love, for my circle. And
Positive,
you
all
mentioned
positive.
that one time, Kimberly, like whoever's in my bubble is protected and has everything I have.
Yeah.
Right. But so when I allow other people to hurt me or to stay in my brain or hold that emotion, I feel like I'm just giving them my energy and they're not worth my energy. So to me, that's how I have been able to work up to that, because I'm very sensitive, right? Everybody looks tough on the outside, but everybody has sensitivity.
Oh yeah, I wear all my emotions right here, right? Like I mean, if I'm mad, if I'm sad,
and
if
people
I'm
have been like, please don't be mad at me because I know you're gonna be dead to me. Like, basically it's like you could be right there and you don't exist.
Yeah.
But it's my coping mechanism. Like that's how I protect myself, really, right? Maybe it's not the best, but definitely, like I treat people good and I expect the same. And if we're not on that same level, then we don't need to be really working together.
And I have a little saying that I have developed for myself over time at work, and some of it applies to home. But if at work, I look at it this way: if you don't sign my check, if you don't write my evaluation, if I don't respect you, then I don't care about what you have to say about me or what you do. And professionally and personally, I always say something similar. If I have no respect for you, you have no role in my life. If you're not the person curling my toes, I don't care about what you've got to say about me.
Yeah.
I don't care about it. My wife thinks it's blusterous when I say I don't care about other people's opinion, because I've forged my own that's strong enough, and that's where that self-respect piece becomes so important.
So you self first, but do you care about your parents' opinions? God rest their souls.
I care about people that I respect.
He respects.
There we go.
You missed that part.
And just because I'm not going to go down that path, right? But just because my dad was my dad, I can't tell you I respected him all the time.
Okay.
So his opinion of me wasn't a pillar of what forged me or made me happy. Now, if you ask me if I cared about my mom's opinion about me, I can tell you I 100% did that. Okay. And
she earned it. People earn your respect.
Yeah.
They earn your love. They earn the gratitude. They earn those things.
Yeah. I don't believe that because someone is a relative or has a title, a familiar, a family title, that you automatically need to care what they say about you.
Yeah. Well, I think that a lot has to do, which we can dive into on next live or a live soon, about the whole Latin culture in itself, because all three of us are Latins. I'm %, you two are 100%, but it doesn't matter. I definitely grew up in, being from El Paso.
Why do you gotta dance when you say Latin?
Yeah.
We just got that little salsa in us.
But we grew up in a time, our X generation, we're all three X generational folks, right? Diana X gen. Did we already clarify that? Have I ever asked you? Okay. Anyway, she's an endless angel being that she has no age.
I have no age because I'm creative.
There we go. But at the time that I want to put the label on it, but at the time for me, I am, I'll be 50, and I am a Latin and a white Baptist background, Latin Catholic, white Baptist, and my family didn't believe in therapy. Like, I didn't start therapy till I was in my 30s, right? I didn't even start talking leadership, like going to leadership programming stuff until my late 30s. But if I had started therapy a lot sooner, when I was in my 20s, I wouldn't have ended up in emergency detention in my 50s. I believe that.
Yeah, I mean, and being Latin is a lot of colors, flavors, and nationalities. So even though we are Latin, we might have completely different views on how we were raised, right? Or experiences. I mean, I never experienced racism until I moved to Dallas.
Yeah, well, you're from the Valley. That's why.
That's just because I spoke Spanish. The moment I spoke Spanish, they were like, "Oh, you're Latina or you're Mexican? Oh my God.
Are you sure? Are you sure that wasn't just the feeling, the vibe that they were giving you? And you were,
I'm pretty good at reading the vibe.
You what?
And throughout the years, I've seen a bit of discrimination because I'm a female, because you start seeing the different things, because I'm Latina, because of so many different things. And like Alonso says, I don't play the victim. I just keep going harder, right? Because at the end of the day, if you want to win, you're going to win.
Yeah.
It might then be in the right environment, right? So you might not win there, but you got to continue, keep going.
Yeah. And I have learned not to push on. I have learned to, get back up and try again. That's just my nature. But I am learning through my, all of my therapy and through these experiences, I'm becoming even more self-aware than I was before. Cause I've always known I'm extra, that I'm a force to be, that I have a lot of energy, but it took therapy and going to like group programs and therapy, stuff like that, to even become self-aware that I need to give people space, that I know that I can say the wrong words sometimes and they could hurt feelings. That's why I wanted to start this off by apologizing. But I am, is an everyday thing. And when you get bullied at work, it is a part of life. Like, what do they say? How many hours a day do you spend at work? What is it? You got to know that number. Somebody should know that number. I could probably Google it.
And a work culture, like, that is a big role as well. Like, I've seen different cultures react different. And sometimes I don't feel understood or part of that clique, right? Because I'm the only Latina there. So
yeah.
And that's not being like, oh, poor me. No, it's just,
there needs to be more diversity.
You have to learn how to work with other cultures and kind of, mix in.
Definitely.
I can tell you that in my industry in human resources, and this is just my experience, but I'm often the only male on a call.
Yeah, a lot of women.
I'm often the only straight male on a call.
Well, we know about that in multifamily. Yeah, it's
that's it. So there are times where it's funny when we would have these Zoom parties during the pandemic, and because there are folks throughout the country that I work with, and we would all get together on there, and I'll have a cocktail after work on a Friday and just chat, right? So they would all start talking about, hey, well, what shows are you watching, right? And I'm like, well, I watch Yellowstone and I watch FBI and I watch all this stuff, and they're talking about, oh, I watch The Housewives of Atlanta and I watch this stuff, and I'm like, man, I have zero connection.
That's exactly when they would tell me, hey, go watch The Office or go watch this, and this is this character and this is this character, and I would see the work characters, but I was so like not part of a character in there. So I felt so
because it wasn't because the film, it wasn't diverse, right? We are, the only reason we're talking about mental health now is because we started even just talking about diversity space. So it is, we know better, so we need to do better. That is really something around this whole live and what we're trying to share here. And I wrap up because we're already at the 33 mark, and I don't want to go into more time, but this is stop.gov. This is the website that came up when I went to what do you call it?
To get
Google.
When you Googled it.
Details.
Yeah. When I Googled it.
Hey, bullying is a real thing, but once you identify that a person that is bullying you is somehow insecure and is somehow threatened by you, you should feel proud that you're being bullied. That's what I learned. That's how I react to my bullies now. Is like, oh, well, you're giving me the time of day. Thank you. Like,
Thanks. Thanks for letting me live rent free in your head.
Thanks for giving me your energy.
Well, that makes sense, because Gary Vee always says you should feel sorry for them if they're going to take the time to look at your profile and bash you.
I felt very sorry for this person that had billions of dollars.
Yeah.
And was
bullying you.
distracted by me.
Yeah.
I feel actually honored. I was like, damn, okay.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, from a professional standpoint, anyone listening, I will tell you that if you're in an environment at work where you feel you're being bullied, talk to your HR people.
Yep.
Talk to your HR folks. We're built to handle that, and oftentimes we can dive into stuff. And I can tell you there are times that people say I'm being bullied.
Documented though, right? They say
Yeah,
send an email so you can have it in writing.
I always say, let me conduct an investigation. And for those folks that grew up watching reruns on TV, there was an old show called the Dragnet where the investigator always said, "Give me the facts, ma'am, just the facts," right? So let me dig into the facts. Sometimes it's not bullying.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes it's somebody holding you accountable to do your job. But when it is bullying, let your HR professionals know so they can help you.
But like for instance, there was a bad rap with HR professionals
for a while.
So where they're like, they're not going to do anything for you because they're working for this company, right?
Company people.
That's where
that's when you go above their head. That's when
no, but that's when they're like, make sure everything's documented. Make sure you
don't go above their head. Don't go above their head. There are good people in HR, and that's why HR used to be called personnel, then HR. Now it's called talent acquisition or people services, stuff like that. But it's really important to talk to folks and get those things out and be understood and be heard, because oftentimes just as you talk through stuff, you kind of realize, well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Yeah, but if it is, let your HR people handle that.
And document it. Like Diana said, you send document via, like Poncho, you two said email. But if you're like text, if you're getting text and you feel like they're being bullied, document it, take it to your HR. Poncho said, don't go above the head. But if you still feel like HR is not helping, then go to stopbullying.gov. That's what that website is for. And look up those resources on there and report it then. And if worst case scenario, go to Glassdoor.com and put your feedback on there.
Indeed as well.
Yeah. Oh, and Indeed. Okay, good.
Yeah. I'm going to sound like a total HR guy here, though. Okay.
What? Okay, go ahead. That's all right.
When you do that, okay, you just have to be honest.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree.
You have to be honest.
It's both ways.
Don't use it as a tool to fight back at someone that you've got an issue with. And oftentimes it's not bullying just because you didn't get the right answer.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. And that's something that I tell folks at work all the time. Our currency is honesty. I'm going to be honest with you. Sometimes the truth hurts.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be honest with you. You're always going to know where you stand.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody handles that way. You're right, but HR people have come a long way.
Yeah.
I'd like to think anyway.
And thank you for saying that, right? Like you need to double check yourself. Being self-aware. I always ask people to, I would ask the hard questions to people who really knew me, especially in business when I started taking group therapy and leadership, going to leadership conferences and stuff like that. I would ask Diana, I would ask my old business Janet, and let them and make it a safe space and say, okay, and do I do this? And then, do I do this? One, just yes or no, and give me your honest feedback, right? It helped me something, but I had to know. So that way I could know better and do better, right? Like I want to leave this planet better off than I found it. That's the whole point of these lives.
You always, my little tagline is, I want to be a better human than I was yesterday, right? So I need to learn from my mistakes today, because we're going to make mistakes every single day.
Yeah.
And I just want to be a better human the next day.
Well, I'm throwing up your handle just while you're doing that, so we can get last thoughts. Those are, Poncho, what are your last thoughts on?
My last thoughts is as an HR professional, I always tell my people that we're a service department, and that we are here to advocate for our people and support our managers. Yeah. And support is often training them, telling them no, teaching them to do better, to create a very healthy culture at work where everybody can be their best.
Yeah. Well, We appreciate you breaking this down with us, Poncho. And it is something super important. It was something that I reflected over. It kind of spilled over from my personal into my life. And that's why we're here. So if anyone, I threw up your all. If anybody wants to be a guest on Industry Live, you can go to this link and hopefully it's working now. So if it's not, send me a message, comment that it's not working. If you watch us on the replay, make sure you put hashtag replay sensitive emotions or hashtag replay and the city that you watched it from. And let us know if you have a question down there. What else? Anything else before we, or you can an email to this email address if you want to be on, if that link is not working. And yeah, is there anything else? If you know someone, yeah, share this with someone that you think that should be on as a guest.
Yep. Like, share, and subscribe, please.
There we go. And until next Wednesday, we'll have to figure out how we're going to tie the Latina or the Latin.
Latina. Hey, Alonso's
Sorry,
here too.
He said, he was like, often in H, there's predominantly women, and that's the same thing in multifamily. Like, you know, so anyways, yes, we appreciate y'all joining us today. And until next day, I don't know, what should we say, folks?
Hasta luego.
Nos vemos.
Yeah, ate guacho. Bye, guys.
Bye.